Good evening. Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, November 17th. Again, we're back on virtual. Good evening. And after the latest from the governor, this is going at least through December 14th. And the way things are going, we'll probably be going past that. So thank you for being with us by Zoom tonight. And we'll continue to hold city business this way. We're trying to do the best we can. Tonight, we've got a couple of public hearings, and we have a couple of people who signed in to testify tonight, so we'll do our best to make sure those people are. So with that, Dee, why don't you take roll?
All right, thank you, Mayor. Mayor Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen.
He's here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Under announcements tonight, the Palouse Regional Transportation Planning Organization wants your input to shape recommendations for policy decisions, investments, improvements about needed improvements, repairs, new capacity, and concerns related to safety and engineering. You can go to the Palouse Trail at PalouseRTPO.org and give your input for that. To facilitate city cleanup services, a College Hill Street parking prohibition will be in effect during WSU's Thanksgiving break. That's Monday through Friday, November 23rd to the 27th, from 2 to 9 a.m. Complete details available at the city website. And if you've not heard, the Pullman Needs You campaign to support local and family-owned businesses more important now than ever. Please consider shopping local first for items, gift cards, and everything. And this support keeps our friends and neighbors and businesses going through these tough economic times with COVID-19 around and all the different limitations that we have. Last week, we lost a friend and a wonderful member of our community, Bill Gaskins. Bill was head of the pharmacy for Pullman Hospital. He was a clinical instructor for the College of Pharmacy. Some know Bill from sports. He played for the Cougs, scholarship athlete. He played with the Canadian League, Calgary Stampeders, was a Pac-10 official for 17 years, and that included bowl games as well. Observer of officials of the Pac-12, a great community member. He's a member of the Pullman City Council. When I first came to town in 1979, he had served from 77 to 81. We have somewhat of an official Gaskins rule that no new business is entered in after 11 o'clock at night. That was one of the things that Bill tried to get involved and definitely said, hey, our meetings have been going. They started their meetings at that time at 7:30, and they went on and on. I can remember when I first came to town as a young professor in the Murrow College. Of course, it wasn't a Murrow College at that time. During the summers, I had to fill in at the radio station and cover Pullman City Council meetings. And having covered news in Sacramento and Los Angeles, it was sort of interesting to cover Pullman City Council. And one night I was there and I sat through the whole meeting for about 3 hours and I could not figure out what the heck they did. And I went up to Bill afterwards and I says, Bill, I'm trying to find what exactly happened during this meeting, what was actually approved so I could have a lead for my story tonight. And he says, nothing happened. And that's another reason why I'm not running for city council again. Well, with that, now I had a news story. So Bill was helpful in that regard. He was just a great guy. And I know a lot of us on this line here tonight know Bill and know Felicia. And if it wasn't for COVID-19 right now, there would be a memorial service for Bill that would be packed out. I'll tell you that. Our sympathy extended to Felicia, who for years has been a vice president with WSU. Their two children, Helen and William III. There's a couple of scholarships in Bill and Felicia's names and to honor Bill's life. Full obituaries at the Kimball Funeral Home website. So Bill will be greatly missed in this community. With this, we now go to item number C on our agenda tonight.
Glenn, I want to add something.
Yeah, certainly. Al, go ahead.
In regards to Bill, he was a lifelong friend of our family, and he will be truly missed in this community, as you said. Black or white, it didn't matter to Bill in this town, neither did it to anybody else. Bill was one of the community and one of the best, most upstanding citizens I've ever met in my entire life. and I'm a better person for knowing him. And I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.
Okay. He was also a great collaborator too. It's just, I think mainly from all the experience in sports, regardless of what your position was, we'd find a way to work together and get a lot of things accomplished. And that's the kind of thing that Bill did. So with that, let's move to item number C, which is presentations tonight. A little bit earlier, Alan Davis and I had a chance to meet with the Kiwanis Club. It happened to be a rather rainy day. Francis Benjamin's on the line today. He's the president of the Kiwanis Club. We wanted to have a representative from Kiwanis on the line tonight just for the council to thank Kiwanis for all the work they've done to help us out with Mary's Park. So, Francis, if you'll unmute, I know you may have some comments to make in terms of the Kiwanis contributions. This is another one. You've made a big one before. So, Francis Benjamin is the president of Kiwanis.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I appreciate that. And the Kiwanis Club is the oldest and largest service club in Pullman. We founded back in 1922. And we're dedicated to changing the world for the better, one child, one community at a time. And really, we do focus in Pullman on how do we improve Pullman for all of our youth. And so this donation to Mary's Park is really to focus on Pullman's first all-inclusive park. We wanted it, for ADA accessible, for everybody to be able to have access to it. It's very important to us. Mayor Johnson, as you mentioned, we did a fairly large check earlier where we actually gathered money for the last decade to go to this fund. And then after we donated our first big check, we then did a call out for matching community donations, had a number of community members that donated, and then we matched that, and that's what this check is for that we handed over. I definitely appreciate the opportunity that Kiwanis had in doing this, and especially for you being a Kiwanian, for Councilmember McCall for being on the Kiwani board. We have a number of department heads that are either Kiwani members or very active in attending and supporting Kiwanis in that way. Unfortunately, Ginger Flynn, our past president, wasn't able to attend. She's really the one that should get the credit to be able to be here because she was the most involved with this check, along with the project coordinator, Carrie Swanson. But for us, we're glad that we can partner with the city with this donation and make a difference for the all-inclusive park. Thank you.
And I think Brandon and Ann are also members of the Kiwanis Club too. Nathan, I see your hand is up. Okay, Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Francis, thank you so much. And to Kiwanis, I know watching Mary's Park developed from an idea many, many, many years ago when we first received it at Pullman, from a food forest at first to a WSU project and inclusive park. It's been really amazing to see everything that's gone on. And, thank you, Francis, for your work and all of the Kiwanians. So.
All right. There. Francis, thank you again for being on here tonight. And again, I see Dan Records with a hand up.
Yeah, Francis, I just wanted to say to you and all the Kiwanis members and everybody involved in the project, every time I talk with anybody about Mary's Park, if they didn't know about it, they get excited about it. And if they knew about it, they're just eager to get involved and help out. And it's something that has sparked a lot of interest, and there's a lot of appreciation in the community for that project. So thank you.
Well, we're glad to be partners, and for everyone that is involved in this.
All right. Well, thank you again. So from that, we now go to item D on the agenda tonight. This is the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. The council's had a chance to look at these ahead of time. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Laura McAloon.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 101473 through 101491, electronic transfers 648 and 653 through 657, and payroll direct deposits numbered 64865 through 65178, totaling $1,247,113 A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 101492 through 101547, totaling $7,232,605.10. Resolution number R-76-20, a resolution authorizing the execution of a wireless communication facility permit agreement between the City of Pullman and Inland Cellular LLC for the construction, operation, maintenance, repair, and removal of a wireless communication facility at the Y Tank 10 site. Resolution number R-77-20, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of the First Amendment to State Operating Grant Agreement number PTD-0020 between Pullman Transit and the Washington State Department of Transportation, adding funds in support of the city's dial-a-ride system. And resolution number R-78-20, a resolution authorizing the execution of the Third Amendment to the 2019 to 2020 agreement for use of public transportation system and enhanced levels of public transportation service between the City of Pullman and Washington State University.
Is there any item the council would like out for discussion? Al Sorensen, what's the number?
3.
3. Item number 3. Okay, any others? Then the consent agenda consists of items 1, 2, 4, and 5. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now to item number 3. Al Sorensen.
Okay, just real quick, I know that we had discussed this item previously and had some concerns about things, and just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to pass this thing because it was already in the loop, and if there's other things that we need to do about stuff, we will work on that in the future, but this was something that had to be already agreed upon and part of the legal process. Laura, can you expand, please?
Sure, that would be correct. So this permit is essentially the last step in a site plan approval process that's already gone forward. And even though part of the discussion was, can we add additional conditions and change that? This permittee would be vested in what the regulations are at the time of their application. So we have this, and then we have one more coming that's also got site plan approval from another wireless communication provider. Any changes you'd want to make to the wireless communications code, that code's actually already under review by the Planning Commission because of the 5G update. So that's in review. So an item for you to consider under new business or at a future meeting is a discussion of, do you want the Planning Commission to look at anything else in addition to the 5G updates to that portion of Title 17?
And I would piggyback on that and say that I think there is some discussion and some things that we should think about for future. And there are things that we can do to kind of roll back on this just a little bit. So thank you, Laura, for expanding on that.
With that, do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
A second, please.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. We now move to the regular agenda. And tonight is public hearing. We mentioned that as we first started out tonight, that we have a couple of public hearings. But this is regarding the 2021-2022 mayor's proposed budget. And we'll turn over to Mike Urban first of all, and then we'll go to public. We definitely have heard from 2 people that want to do some testifying tonight, so we'll do that. But first of all, to Mike Urban.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. So in accordance with RCW 35.34, the City of Pullman is required to maintain a timely process in adopting the 21-22 biennial budget, and as such, the City Council adopted the final budget calendar on July 14th, which is attached to this agenda item. And in addition to that, RCW 84.55.120 requires a public hearing to be held with respect to revenues, prior to setting the yearly property tax levy. And as part of the budget, this was done on that calendar date on October 6, 2020 as well. So tonight before you, according to RCW 35.34.110, it requires the legislative body, the City Council, to hold a public hearing on the budget so that any taxpayer may be heard for or against any part of the mayor's proposed budget. So this agenda item serves as that, and as part of that agenda item, I've also attached the preliminary budget for the benefit of our viewers as well as the people that wanted to speak. I am aware that we were contacted by 2 individuals, and I see them both on here. So that's really the end of my presentation, and if there's any questions before the public hearing, I'd be happy to answer them.
Seeing none, we'll go to the public hearing. First of all, Allison Harris. And again, as we have as our common practice, we'll have a maximum of 3 minutes on any kind of testimony. So Allison Harris, it's your turn to speak before the council.
Hello.
Allison, you're on mute.
Hello.
Yes.
I would like to make a request to include something in the CIP, Capital Improvement Plan, namely putting lights in at the Sunnyside pickleball courts and converting the tennis court at Sunnyside into more pickleball courts. And here are a couple of reasons why. It would be a tourism opportunity for Pullman. Pickleballers are willing to travel from all over the region to attend tournaments. They often span 2 days, which encourages attendees to require local lodging and food accommodations. It's common to hold several tournaments a year in one city during the outdoor pickleball months. Right now, with Pullman only having 4 courts at one park with no lights, holding a bigger tournament is difficult. Converting the tennis court at Sunnyside into several more pickleball courts would make it a perfect place to hold big tournaments. 8 courts would be ideal, but even 6 or 7 would be better than 4. And lights would allow some flexibility with the tournament times allowing play in the evenings. Right now, people from Montana, northern Idaho, and eastern Washington attend successful tournaments in Lewiston, Coeur d'Alene, and Tri-Cities, which have more courts and lights. These same people would also come and play in Pullman if we had a good facility with more courts and lights as well. Also, adding more courts and lights to Sunnyside would also improve the pickleball quality of life for Pullman residents. Putting in pickleball courts at Sunnyside and Krugel, I think, was one of the best things the city has decided to do at our parks. The positive response to them was immediate, and the number of people using them has increased rapidly. The pickleball courts are almost always in use when I go to play on a regular basis, while the adjoining tennis court is usually empty. Many times pickleballers have to wait in court or wait for courts to open up while the tennis court sits empty. Converting the tennis court into more pickleball courts would solve that problem. With several tennis courts near the high school, one at Krugel, and many on WSU campus, the Sunnyside tennis court probably won't be missed that much. Also, lights would really help players who have to work. The daylight hours are very limited when people are finished with work, so they have a small amount of time to play. Lights would allow them to play well into the evening, which I know many of our group have expressed interest in. And lastly, our pickleball Facebook group is currently at about 80 members, with many more who aren't on the Facebook group. And there are many more in Pullman who play on the courts that are not part of our Facebook group. And so we have tons of interest in them. We also have people in our group who are from Lewiston, from Troy, from Moscow, from Coeur d'Alene.
And Allison, we're getting near the end of the time right now. So
okay.
I think you said that
so
was
I would
lastly, so we thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
And then we go now to Scott Hodge, and I think it's a similar topic. So Scott.
Scott, you're on.
Hello, Glenn. Thanks. Yes, I just want to talk about the same thing that Allison just spoke about and offer maybe my story. I had never even heard of pickleball, believe it or not, until COVID hit and the gym at SEL closed, and I was looking for an outdoor activity to do. And we bought some rackets. We went over, and it's been just a delight to learn pickleball and to be able to integrate into the community of players that had already discovered it and long before me had petitioned to get the courts here. One of the things I learned when I traveled long before coming to Pullman is that softball tournaments were a huge thing in terms of tourism for a community. A softball tournament requires you to have 4 to 8 softball fields in order to host a tournament, just like Allison said about pickleball. And the ability to put in 6 more softball courts is cost prohibitive, and you'd need enough flat ground to do it. But what we could do is put in more pickleball courts and accomplish the same thing. I'm just amazed at how many people have shown up to do pickleball. You'll see the pictures that I sent, and hopefully you're all looking at them. What you're noticing in those pictures is that in 2 of them, this is out for a morning walk. I took pictures a week after those pine needles fell onto that tennis court. You'll notice the pickleball courts have all been cleared because people use them morning and night. A whole group of people would show up at 5:30 in the morning to play pickleball. And when I'd come in the evening, the courts are packed. In fact, that other picture you see of Allison waiting to get on the courts, I was waiting there with her. Obviously, nobody is playing tennis, and there's 16 people playing pickleball with 2 of us waiting to get on the courts. And those are just pickup games. That's not a tournament. That's just an average evening. And the advantage you have in having a tournament there is that you can see with the other picture of the pond there is that facility allows for families to come and participate in other activities while the participant in pickleball is playing, right? There's other courts there. There's a playground. There's a pond, places to walk. It's just a wonderful facility. Be a huge boon to the Pullman community in order to increase the pickleball capabilities, both in the number of courts and then having them lit so that you can play early in the morning or late at night. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you, Scott. And that concludes our public testimony. We're going to close the public hearing right now. Al Sorensen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of quick comments on the pickleball courts. I mean, it's awesome. I think, as anyone would think, we need to, before we put lights on anything like that, being in a neighborhood like that, we have to think about an awful lot of things in regards to the local residents, light at night, and other things. I'm not saying I don't want to do it. I'm just saying there's a lot of things that we have to check into before we do something like this. I appreciate both Allison and Scott testifying tonight and pledging for this. But I just want you to know there's a lot of things involved with this other than just putting them up and here we go.
That's absolutely correct. Very good. Thank you. With that, we now move to item number 2. We concluded the public.
Mayor,
Yeah,
I see 2 council members with questions.
Pardon? Okay, Brandon.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Mayor. Thank you, Allison. I was looking to see if Parks is here right now, but maybe Mike, maybe you'd be able to get a figure back for us. Allison had mentioned CIP, but maybe we could have somebody give an estimate on what lights would cost, just so we have an idea. And I think that does sound like a CIP type situation. So, but maybe we could get some sort of idea from whomever might be able to get that. I think that would be appreciated. And I know we have a few courts at Krugel, and that's definitely a neighborhood park. So I think Alice Point's well taken there. Where these courts are located at Sunnyside, I don't know that would be an issue, but I think in all cases, I think Al's point is well taken on making sure we don't have any unintended consequences and some angry neighbors.
And I think Mike can get back, but I see Eileen's got a hand up too. Eileen?
Yeah, I think Allison raises an intriguing point about tournament play and the potential for bringing people into town. My question, I guess, is for Laura under the sort of the capital improvement segment is, would this improvement maybe fall under LTAC money?
Oh. Yeah, that's certainly a possibility that they could apply for a grant, or a group could apply for the grant, or the city could apply for a grant to fund those if the purpose is to build tourism facilities.
Thank you.
It's an excellent suggestion, because that would bring, they mentioned how people could be brought into the community, and that would definitely be in that category. So And Mike, I think at a later date, we can probably come back after Alan's had a chance to look at that in terms of the potential for creating more courts and also what the lights would be. And obviously, we would have to have a public hearing for the lights and all the other kinds of things that go along with that. As Al mentioned, there's a lot of concern too for lights at night, as we heard many times when we've had construction projects here and they talked about parking lots. So.
Yeah, and we would want to work with engineering too to make sure that the electricity that needs to be out there is out there as well. So
Right.
bring in that component also.
Okay, with that, we now move to item number 2, and that's the budget discussion. Mike,
Sure.
we'll go back to you.
Back to me. Thank you. So on November 2nd and November 10th, we held budget workshops with the different departments to talk about expenditures. And again, on October 6th, we did have the revenue hearing where we could discuss those items. So this agenda tonight is really to let council have a discussion and formulate what they would like to see as a final budget document. It's still tentatively scheduled to come back in front of you on December 1st, but I'm hoping to get the guidance so I can bring you a clean document that night. Now, before we do go into that, I hope you'll indulge me. I sent everybody an email over the weekend where I highlighted again the items that I brought up verbally during the last council meeting. So I wanted to touch on those items first before you got into your deliberations. There's some folks online here that are going to help me with some parts. So if you're looking at the email, I'm just going to start at the first bullet point and work our way down. So the first item was position changes throughout the city. And I put out a matrix on that where we went through the different departments. And just going down that really quick, the first item is the city administrator, replacing that position. That's a couple more bullet points down, so I'm going to pivot back to that here in a minute. The finance department has a full-time or a administrative clerk that's I'm looking to take from 3/4 time to full-time at the end of 2021. Police has their portion, and after I go through this, I'm going to pivot to Gary Jenkins next, and he's going to elaborate on that. The fire department has the 3 firefighters that council already approved with the SAFER grant, so I wanted to make sure we pointed that out here as well. These next 2 items, inspections and public works, kind of go together. The request is to reclassify the senior building inspector to the actual building official, and then that would remove the public works director and the deputy public works director from management of that office, and therefore the general fund wouldn't be touched on that. So it'd be kind of a revenue neutral move. As RJ Lott mentioned last week, he's looking for a new assistant planner in the 3rd quarter of next year. These next 2 items are from Kurt Damon. We've talked a little bit about the replacing the senior citizen program coordinator as soon as COVID will allow us to. We're hoping that's going to be the 2nd quarter, and we're still hoping for that. The next item is the assistant aquatics program coordinator. This was a previously approved position by council. It didn't get filled going into COVID, so it's still out there. So I wanted to keep that on the front burner because it is included in the budget. Government Buildings has a custodian change from part-time to full-time. They have an existing person for this, and this is really facilitated by the addition of the city hall and still having to take care of the old city hall building, so there's just more square footage. IT has a reclassification of a technician to a specialist. This is an existing position. There's the GIS position, which we've talked about, and I'm going to pivot back to that after Gary speaks. And then these last 3 items are all in maintenance and operations public works. So 2 additional maintenance workers. These are actual boots on the ground to get some work done. Reclassifying the maintenance supervisor to street, stormwater, and sewer supervisor. This is a replacement of a position that has not been filled. It's It was a retired position from last year, and it just remains unfilled. And then the last item is to reclassify an operations supervisor to the utility manager. This is an existing individual going into a new position. So that's just really a quick 30,000 foot view on that. I'm going to pivot to Chief Jenkins now to talk about police, and then I'll jump back on the GIS position and the administrator position before we move on to the next topic for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and good evening, Mayor and Council. So we currently have 4 sworn police officer vacancies. As you may recall, during my budget presentation, the 2021-22 budget reflects carrying 3 of those vacancies through both years. So after hearing some council feedback from the budget presentation and talking with Mayor Johnson and Interim City Administrator Mike Urban, we're looking at the possibility of filling some or all of those vacancies during the 2021-22 budget years. So we're working right now to fill that 4th vacancy. And that's with the lateral recruitment process. We're currently conducting a background on 2 lateral applicants. So our recruitment strategy moving forward is really to recruit from 3 different categories, and I'll explain those. The first is what we call entry level. And so these are people who do not have any police officer experience or any police academy training. So these are people without that experience and training that we would send to the academy if we hired them, and then train them once they got back to Pullman PD from the academy. The second category is lateral, which is the process we're using currently to try to fill that 4th vacancy. These are applicants who have either 2 years as a police officer, either in Washington State or in a state whose academy is recognized by the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. So they would not have to go through the basic academy again, but they would have to attend an equivalency academy if they came in from out of state, which is about 2 weeks in length. We created just recently with the Civil Service Commission a 3rd category, which we call a basic law enforcement academy graduate. So this category, the minimum qualification is that someone has graduated from the Washington State Basic Law Enforcement Academy, but does not have the required years of experience as an officer to meet the lateral requirement. So this category was created recognizing that right now there are officers being laid off from law enforcement agencies in Washington who are being essentially defunded. And so they're having to cut their budgets and lay people off. But they have officers who have completed the academy and just started training and would make good candidates, but they haven't met the lateral requirement. So we created this other category to seek out candidates who meet that minimum criteria. So our plan is really to, from here moving forward, is to have recruitments in all 3 categories and then hire the best out of each. Each of the categories has its inherent risks with applicants. Entry-level applicants have no prior experience that we can look to, and so we can't really assess their performance in a law enforcement capacity. Laterals, sometimes you could inherit another agency's problem. And then just the academy graduates, they may have intentions of returning back to the original agency that hired them and put them through the academy after they complete training with our agency. So we're aware of all those inherent risks, and we have a very thorough and demanding background process. We're extremely selective in who we hire. Our philosophy is that we do not sacrifice quality for expediency. So we focus on integrity and ethics and decision-making of the applicants. And that strategy has really proven to be very successful in hiring from entry-level and laterals. So as we move forward now, as we develop hireable applicants, I will work with Mayor Johnson and Interim City Administrator Urban on funding and timing to see if we can start filling those other 3 vacancies. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments? Al Sorensen.
Gary, I agree, and I think wholeheartedly that we need to move forward as quickly as possible to try to fill those additional 3 vacancies that we voted on and approved years ago. I think we need to do everything in our power to find it in the budget to be able to get that to happen. We don't want to end up behind in any case with our officers in this town. And as I know, and whether other council members know or not, it takes sometimes 18 months to get a new officer indoctrinated into the system here. So it's not like we can post it and have them hired tomorrow. So we have to move forward with this, in my opinion, as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Back to Mike Urban. Thank you, Gary.
Let me just, yeah, thank you, Chief. And I did have a very good conversation with him and the mayor and Commander Jake Opkennorth about some of what's going to take to get through these. And as I stated in this email, the administration and finance stands behind the process and getting these people hired for the city and streeted. I just want to touch on the 2 other positions I'd mentioned in the email before I open up to questions on the whole matrix, just real quick. So the first is the GIS position, and we've talked about this in extent over the last several weeks. If it pleases the council, we'd really like to start moving ahead on this position. It was budgeted for 2020. It is budgeted for 21 and 22. We're just worried about these base layer maps and getting them started and making sure we stay up to date on all the work that we've been paying the state of Washington to do. We feel that we could probably start after the Thanksgiving holiday and be through the process by the end of December. So really the effects would be having them start as early as January 4th. So I just wanted to bring that to council as a possible discussion topic. And then the last item is the city administrator position. We've had a lot of questions about what we'd be doing to replace Adam Lincoln. And right now, under the circumstances, we're pushing the budget out. We're still hitting pretty high numbers up until today on our COVID. And this is just something that we would really like to see the COVID count go down a little bit so we can do the full national recruitment and actually be able to attract the person that we want here to be doing this position full time. So it is definitely on our radar. Some of the savings that we have on the salary in the first quarter will go towards advertising on that national search. So it is in the works, and we can keep you abreast of that as it goes on. And that's kind of a really good point to stop right now and really just ask if there's any additional questions on the matrix on any of these other items. Eileen, Brandon, Pat.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Under the Recreation Senior Center on the matrix, about you're looking to hire that position in the second quarter of 2021. The Senior Association Board met just this morning, or yesterday morning, and we discussed this, at length, and we've discussed it before, and we've mentioned this to Kurt as well. We are in no hurry to have that position rehired under the present COVID circumstances. The association just is willing to sit tight on this. The association has plenty of membership work to do, and it's going very well for us. So we would prefer that the city not rush into that and hold that position open. And we've also had preliminary discussions with Kurt about auditing that position, thoroughly going through that position. It had become very unwieldy and not very efficient. And we want to make sure that when we move forward to hire that position, when the time comes, that we can help that person do a better job and do better for the association. We may even look at splitting that job, all sorts of different options. So we're in no hurry to have that happen. We're willing to sit tight. So thank you.
No, thank you. I put that in my notes, and I'll definitely reach out to Kurt and circle back around. Brandon, Pat, and Nathan, I think is what I saw.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Mike. You mentioned GIS, and you mentioned having a discussion on that. I didn't know if you meant tonight or sometime in the future. because maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that most of us were on board with the GIS, and I'd like to see that get going sooner than later.
Yeah, I was hoping for maybe a simple head nod that I can move forward on the advertising on that position. So when you guys get into your discussion, if you'd like to have that, that's really kind of what I'm asking for. If we can go through the hiring, assuming that that position will be fully funded in 21 as the budget presents. Pat and Nathan.
Thank you, Mike. I totally agree with your analysis of the hiring for the new city administrator. My comment is more of a personal nature, and that is for you, Mike. If delaying the filling of this position, is that going to work for you? I just want to make sure we still have a finance administrator by the time the process is over.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to mention my wife once again at a council meeting. She loves that. When this was discussed, I was planning that I would be interim, probably to get through the hiring process. It would probably take most of the first quarter. So I'm in it, and I'm ready to help the city weather this part until we can get the right person in the chair. So thank you for asking.
Okay. You're welcome.
It
Just
was
want to
a
be
family decision.
respectful of you.
Thank you. Nathan?
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I would have to agree with Councilmember Wright. You know, you've taken on a lot on your shoulders, and I want to make sure, you know, you're giving yourself some personal time. I know we discussed this, and keeping yourself, you know, healthy physically and mentally, because we can't stand to lose you as well. So if you feel that you can still do this, then I'll agree with you and support you. Of course, I agree with Brandon with GIS. But yeah, Mike, I'd love to hear how you're doing sometime. I know probably not right now, but you know, stay in there. We definitely need you. So.
No, thank you. I'm liking taking on some of this extra responsibility and being able to work a little deeper with some of the departments than I would other than finance. There will come a time where doing two jobs will just be too much, but we're definitely committed and ready to get through the first quarter. And the mayor and I talk regularly, and again, the family's super supportive, and my staff has really stepped up and done an excellent job. And the entire city staff is eager to help me with making sure that the council agenda and the council goals continue to move on. So no, I remain committed to getting the best possible person in that position. So thank you. Were there any other questions on positions before I pivot to the next bullet point? Okay, excellent. So the next bullet point was an item brought up during the economic development presentation for professional marketing materials for business recovery, retention, and expansion. And for this, I'm going to pivot to Jen Hackman, who's on the line.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The marketing packet project that I outlined in the budget is going to create a simple and professional package of information. And this would be put together to market the city of Pullman to aid in recovery and additional investment. And the audience anticipated is the development community. That includes commercial and retail brokers and developers, investors, property owners, and retailers. Although I do think that a package like this might find other audience members, and the content could be repositioned as well. But what I'm thinking is a package that includes information about the business climate, market gap information or retail leakage, industries and workforce quality of life, and focusing on our commercial centers and points of interest in Pullman, like our downtown core and other commercial areas that would be available for investment. So I would be hiring a marketing firm, mostly to help with the design and pictures and photographs. And I'd like to see that then replicated on the city website or possibly on a subdomain. And then I anticipate that, it's a modest budget, and I would be writing likely most of the copy and providing the information, but it would be getting some help from a firm on the design elements. And I think that is all that I've got there. But the budget I've got is $4,000 for 2021 to create that package. Just something physical that when brokers or investors or developers come to Pullman and want to know what's happening in Pullman, that I have something to physically hand them, and then again to replicate that on the web. I'll be happy to take any comments or questions.
And that also would be used for recruiting to send out too, as much as people just inquiring. And I know one of the big meetings that we usually have is with over 35 or 36,000 people in Las Vegas is the International Shopping Center Convention. And I was turned on to that very early by one of our developers in town, and I handed out material at that time. This would be far better material that we're talking about with Jen. So other comments? Al Sorensen, and then we'll go to Eileen. Okay.
Have we ever actually had anyone come from that Las Vegas convention to Pullman?
You know, one of the things that happens with that is that you drop things on them, you talk to them, and eventually you hear from some firm. I had a lot of contact with an outfit that I met there that was a Seattle real estate firm and developer that actually got some material and got some inquiries going about Pullman. So there's at least inquiries. Whether they come here physically, that they actually tell us that they're coming, I don't know. But we've definitely had some good contact. We've actually had some calls about that. So it was Dwayne Brailsford's the one that told me that you ought to go down there. And I went down there, first of all, with representing the city and paid my own bucks because we didn't have a budget for it. And went down, had some good presentations, actually with Palouse Commercial. And the first time, the second time went down by myself, and also had a chance to work with the Northwest developers too. So at least you had a chance to hand material out to show that we were interested. If you actually look at that convention, there's some areas like in Grant County where there's like 3 different counties that have come together and they actually have a display booth there. The same thing with the Tri-Cities. They actually have a whole display area that they see as valuable for them to make presentations. We obviously didn't have that kind of money, but that's how some of those EDAs work.
So I have a follow-up to Jennifer. Did you say, I couldn't quite understand, did you say your budget was 4,000, like in
Yes.
4?
Yes.
And you think you can hire somebody professional for $4,000?
Like I said, it's very modest. But I did talk to a firm about getting mostly graphic design, and I would be providing the information.
Okay. You know, we've had a lot of discussion about the cost of professionalism and that kind of thing, and I find that number being not really sufficient, in my opinion, for probably hiring somebody professional to come up with the information in the way we want it to be, in my opinion.
And we might be coming back to the council when we find out what the actual cost might be too. Eileen, you're next.
Yeah, speaking of actual costs, have we thought about sending out a request for qualifications type of thing on this at all? I'm hearing, like I say, the first time I heard these expressions of market gap and leakage and all like such was a presentation that Greg Parch did, and it was at least 10 years ago, maybe 14 years ago. So that doesn't really float my boat when I hear that, and $4,000 is a drop in the bucket. We've made some pretty smart cuts in some other areas, and this is an area where I think we need to really get a little expansive. And you know how conservative I am, but recovery. I think we need to hire someone that absolutely has recovery as their guiding star and make it absolutely sparkling clear that we want something that's not handing out brochures. That just makes my blood run cold, quite frankly, because anybody can hand out a brochure at a convention. We've all had that experience. And where do those brochures go? They go into your swag bag, and then they get into the storeroom at home, and you never look at them again. And we need to do something different than that. We need to find the money. There is money in LTAC. There is money in other budgets that we're spending with other resource questionable items. And we'll find this money and put out a request for qualifications, and let's put something together. You mentioned Grant County. I've seen the material that comes out of Grant County. It is dynamite. And let's ask them who they're using. Let's make this. But yeah, just droning on about market gap and leakage and going about what's going to Moscow. I'm not at all. Yeah, that doesn't do anything for me. We need to move forward on this, find the money, and get some pros. We need the pros from Dover on this.
Okay. Any other comments? Back to you, Mike.
Brandon.
Okay, Brandon. And then we have Nathan. Okay, Brandon.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just I'll piggyback off Eileen. I think even while we're talking about tightening our belts, we need to highly consider this for, as Eileen said, recovery. And I'm not opposed to spending the right kind of money. I'm not sure it's always about the amount, but what we're getting for it. And I would like to see something that is measurable, that we can track, that we can amplify once we get that. And so much of this we can do now that is digital. And it just really helps us make smart, informed decisions based on that information that we're getting. So we can better target, we can retarget. And I know that sounds like a lot of marketing buzzwords, but it can really make us, it could really help us make these smart decisions. And we can utilize that kind of information. So, if we're willing to do those kind of campaigns, I don't think it's so much an issue of the amount. I mean, we don't want to overspend, but we can find the money somewhere. And that to me, I'd rather spend $12,000 on something that works, or a lot more than that on something that works than $4,000. And I know what you're trying to do too. You don't want to overreach on the ask, Jen, but I think you may want to consider that amount and be lofty in that request.
Okay, Nathan, and then we'll go to Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jennifer. I agree with what the other council members have mentioned. I think also it's important to see if whoever we hire has some way to track metrics for that campaign. In addition, I would like to emphasize, and I know we've talked about this before, when you do find somebody that you feel is up to the job, worthy of it, to emphasize that Pullman, especially in this region, is very unique in the intellectual capital. I know we're all focused on downtown and retail, and that's important. But Pullman really shines in intellectual capital here as well, and often that gets drained into other communities. So I appreciate you also discussing the leakage. And anyways, we've talked about that before, but intellectual capital is very unique here to Pullman. So,
okay, to Pat Wright.
So I just have two comments. One is that we just need to continue to be sensitive in terms of how we're spending some of these dollars. We heard loud and clear when we went through the round of grant suggestions that people right now are not interested in marketing materials. I mean, we heard that very loud and clear. I don't disagree that we need to start emphasizing recovery, but at the same time, where we've got, especially now in this next round of restrictions, that we've got people that are going to be hurting. And for those people to see us spend dollars, regardless of how minimal they are, it still is not a good optic. That's my first comment. My second comment, and I have to call Laura into this, would utilization of LTAC dollars be appropriate to use in this regard?
No, not for economic development.
That's
Not
what I
unless
wanted to get
unless
clarification.
it's tied to tourism promotion, economic development related to tourism promotion. But what Jen mentioned was real estate developers and bringing businesses, industries to town.
Okay, thank you.
And Laura, your volume's really low. And a couple of times I was having a problem trying to hear it. So
I think it's my voice, not my volume, so I will try to be louder.
okay, thank you, Laura. Okay, Dan, did I see your hand up earlier? Because we haven't heard from you yet, and I just want to make sure you're before I go to Eileen and Nathan again.
Well, I hadn't put my hand up yet. I'm not ready. If I have a comment, I'm not ready yet.
Okay, then I'll go back to Eileen and then Nathan.
I think it was sparkling clear that what people were objecting to was the notion of using CARES dollars for these projects, and there was some misunderstanding, through the media and through some of the materials that the city produced. So that was CARES dollars, and we know that those CARES dollars are extremely valuable in helping our local businesses, hang on until we can move on to something else. So let's try to be clear on that we're talking about finding money within the existing city budget to do a different type of thing, which is marketing and promoting Pullman and with the potential of recruiting downtown businesses, not using CARES dollars or money that's coming through from other agencies to help our local community in that way. So let's be clear on that.
Okay, Nathan, and then we'll go to Ann Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Both Eileen and Pat bring up a good point. Good points. On the one side, yes, the discussion was particular to the CARES dollars, but also, as Pat mentioned, people in general did not like the idea of money being spent on marketing, whether it was for CARES or not, dollars. The challenge that we face is looking, being able to support our existing businesses, but look at investing and looking post-pandemic. It's a very challenging time right now. And Jennifer, I don't envy you and the position you're in right now. It's very challenging. I think you're doing a great job with it. Do you have an estimated time that you would look at doing this? Coming from the community, I do think they would like it a little bit later on, but I don't want to say too late because then we are missing a valuable window. So if you could answer that, then I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Councilmember Weller. I agree with Eileen that an RFQ is a good step to take. And I had anticipated really working on this project in the second quarter, preparing for it in the first quarter and working on it in the second quarter.
Okay, with that, let's go to Ann Parks.
Thank you, Mayor. Nathan pretty much said what I was going to say is I think it's important to I think Jen has a perfect plan, spend the first quarter planning and budgeting and then see where we are. I do really agree with Councilmember Wright that we need to be very careful with our allocation of our dollars right now and how it appears and how it is. If we're talking about employees being furloughed again or not having enough resources where we need them, this does kind of fall a little bit down in priority for me. Not to say to wipe it off the board, but I really do feel strongly that we want to show our community that, and while this is for the benefit of our community, we have many more immediate needs that have been mentioned here, primarily supporting our local businesses. So that was, I think that it's a good plan and it's a good thing to look at, but we need to just step back and look at the whole picture before we take action. Thank you.
Okay, now I see Dan's hand. There you go.
Jennifer, I think, after hearing all the other council members' comments, I think, I'm hearing a couple of things, and one of the things I've been thinking about as we make the shift in the transition to recovery. We don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know kind of the timeline for COVID is unknown. And some of the funding sources, our retail sales tax base, some of those things are still unknown. We don't know what all the damage is going to be. So it's an evolving storyline right now. And we need to keep that in mind and very close to our hearts as well as we make these types of decisions. And I think I take Al's and Eileen's and Brandon's points. I think $4,000 is, like you said, it's modest. I think we need to think broader than that in terms of what is the dollar amount that we're going to think about in terms of a project like this. But I think that needs to be in the context of flexibility in both the project scope, but also the funding for it. And is there a way that we can build that into how we're thinking about this project in terms of stages or different components that we could break out and say, this is, as we learn more information about the pandemic, this is the time to implement this part. And then as we get further along, can we add a second component, to add a little bit of flexibility in both the budgeting for it, but also the implementation of it.
Sure.
I jump in on that because that was something I've been sitting here writing some notes on too. Is I hear that this is a process, and I hear that we should look at recovery and look at what other people are doing. And as Jen goes to develop this project and getting the feedback from council as to what you want this to look like, I certainly think there's room to take that all in and come back with an RFQ. And then when we're ready to go on this, we can re-examine the dollar amount and bring it back as a form of a budget amendment, going through and looking through parts of the budget that people have identified, and then also any new opportunities that may come up with any federal or state dollars for recovery as well. So I'm committed to that process. If council would be interested in throwing a different dollar at it now and having that as a placeholder, that's certainly an option. Leaving it where it is and looking at a budget amendment going into the end of the first quarter, even into the second quarter, once all the feedback has been taken in, it becomes more of a plan, is another way to look at it. So I just want to make sure you had those tools in front of you as well.
So, okay, go back to Al Sorensen.
So I'm trying to take this all in here, and we're talking about really not doing anything until second quarter of 2021. This type of thing has to be fast tracked. This is not something that can be delayed down the road. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. Jennifer, can you just reiterate to me what you were talking about you're actually trying to do here? Can you just briefly give that back to me?
Sure. So what I want to be able to do is to create a marketing packet with information delivered in a simple, professional way for the development community. And that would include information about industries and workforce, the business climate, including demographics, market information, our commercial centers, the type of information that brokers want to know. They can look up that information. We have a lot of that information. It's just in a lot of different places, and pulling it all together into kind of a seamless, one place that would mostly live on the web, but also would be available if there's a meeting and somebody comes because they want to look at, there's a broker coming down from Spokane. I'm not meeting with him, Laura, not indoors, but, wants to take a look at available property, all kinds of different available property. And they want to know, they want to have in their hands a lot of different information pulled together into one package. But it should also reflect who Pullman is, culturally, and should be, should have a lot of, great images and be attractive. And so that's what I'm looking to do. That information, I believe, at a later time could be turned into a campaign that is tracked and measured, and that would be understanding who is coming to take a look at that. This would be a first step.
Okay, so I think there might be a little bit of confusion with the council in regards to what we're talking about here, in regards to your marketing of development versus business, LTAC dollars and tourism, that kind of thing. I have a feeling we blended together somehow here, and I think we need to understand that there's two different things we're really kind of talking about, which we're going to talk about the other, I think, later. But I think I think somehow we got things mixed together. And you're talking more about the development side of things versus, tourism and marketing and that kind of thing. Am I right with that, or?
I'm talking about marketing to commercial brokers and retail brokers, including development community.
So I think that's a little bit different than I think some of the other council members may be thinking. And I actually got sucked into that early here. So I just want to make sure we know what we're talking about. And there's some different aspects to this whole thing. So I thank you for the clarification.
And again, we're trying to discuss tonight on budget items and the impact, as opposed to laying out all the structure and the strategies. So I want to get back to Mike. We've heard on GIS, we've heard on police officers. Other notes that you have in there, Mike?
Yeah, there's two other bullet points in here that I promised council I'd bring some information back on. The next item is the 120 Civic Improvement Fund. So on the workshop on the 2nd, several topics were discussed, including bringing the existing contract with the Pullman Chamber of Commerce more up to date. So if council would like to discuss this, I'm going to tag in and have Laura McAloon be available to help me with some of the contract discussion on that. So I know that there was a lot of discussion on this item, so I just wanted to make sure if there's anything that I need to capture for the budget part of it, that council has the opportunity to discuss that.
Okay, comments. Go to Eileen first.
Well, this is something that, yeah, that this is the third rail here, but I'm going to go ahead and step on it. There is $81,000 that we're spending towards the Civic Improvement Fund. And $81,000 could be spent in a lot of different places, because I'm just not sure what we're getting for that $81,000 of public money. And when we start talking about this contract, we need to decide what we need, what we don't need, and how badly we need that money to do other things, try something different, move in a different direction. I'm not at all content. I expressed this to Laura quite clearly. I'm not all content with just doing a hand waving over this contract. I want to complete an overhaul on it to clarify what we're getting for our money, and if we're getting. This is, again, public money that we're spending. I'm doing some quick podium math here, and Ed Schweitzer says never do podium math because you always do it wrong. But I'm looking at $81,000 out of that Civic Improvement Fund that we could be utilizing to move this community forward. And instead of delaying and saying that we can maybe do something in 6 months, I think this needs to be our finest hour. I think we need to pull our bootstraps and make something happen. And this money exists in the existing city budget. We're not talking about furloughing employees. We're looking at money that is there to be utilized and to help this community, to help our businesses by making Pullman look like what it is, a really wonderful place to be. this virus thing is not going to last forever. Some of the news today was more positive than it's been even in the last 48 hours. So I really want to get moving on something rather than just delay and delay and delay, and hope we can rely on others to help us. We need to help ourselves.
Laura, do you want to restate exactly, like we've heard before, that money and how we bring it in from the hotels and motels and the guests that come in, and what it can be used for?
You have in your budget in the fund description how much revenue is coming in. I'm not sure what the 81,000 is because I'm looking at the proposal budget. It shows the contract amount is 109,000, unless you must have subtracted something out of there. But the 109,000 is what the chamber delivers in the contract. It can be used to fund tourism promotion, staffing, materials, overhead in order to do tourism promotion, and then it can be specifically used for a tourism facility, but we don't currently own any tourism facilities. The tourism promotion grants are a separate 40,000 that's administered through the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee by state law, so that is not part of this contract. And the direct grants to the Holiday Festival, the 4th of July, and the National Lentil Festival, and then the city's cost of insurance, those are directly council-approved allocations to those events. So again, that doesn't go through the chamber contract. It's the services for the employees and benefits for the employees, and then it's specifically lined out on the 1-800 phone number, postage, 0 this next year for travel and tourism meetings, the Palouse Scenic Byway program, brochure printing, local promotions, general advertising through targeted ads, office supplies, equipment rental, technology and software, and then website and DSL feeds.
Okay.
So
Thank you
and
for
all
that.
of that is administered through the contract that you have with the Chamber of Commerce to provide those services. The contract itself, I know Mike gave you that, and I think that's, depending on what you do with the budget, that's where Mike and I would like some direction in terms of what do you want the contract to require your contractor to do. So you've obviously got these very specific items in the budget. So if those are approved and adopted, I would include that in the new contract. But is there anything else that you want? Are there things that you want changed from the existing contract? They run hand in hand.
Okay. I saw Ann Parks. We'll go to Ann next, and then we'll go to Dan. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So we are talking about our contract with the Chamber of Commerce. Is that correct, Laura? And looking at that, thank you. And as I suggested before, I think before we, as Eileen might say, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and just, I think it would be good if we either talk about it amongst ourselves, but also maybe have a joint meeting with the chamber representatives and say, and tell them and talk to them about what it is. Like Laura said, maybe we want to change some things. Maybe they have some ideas. And instead of just eschewing the entire thing, I would like to have some sort of two-way conversation with them at some point to really vet out some of these concerns. And maybe it will result in a reduction or a change, or it could result in something else. But I would really like to see that somehow, whether it's a committee of us or all of us having a roundtable like we did about the court. I find those sorts of gatherings very, very beneficial.
Just to clarify, the contract is annually renewed. So that's
annually
why
renewed.
in conjunction with the budget, if you wanted to make changes to it, that would be the timing to have it.
Right.
You have to, if you're going to terminate it, which I've not heard anybody request that, that termination notice has to be given by December 5th.
Glenn, is anybody else having a hard time hearing Laura? I
Yeah,
can't
we're all.
hear Laura at all.
She's. I think it's an internet connection too, because I think she's trying to talk as loud as she can. And,
Okay.
I apologize. I'm on prednisone and have lung issues going on right now, so my voice is weak.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
She's having a bronchitis issue here right now. So just the fact that she's even able to talk, we're grateful for that.
You're lucky.
Yeah, I'm going to go to.
I'll yell as loud as I can.
Go to Dan Records next.
Looking at the budget items that was laid out for the Civic Improvement Fund, I don't think I have any questions or issues about the dollars and the line items that are in there. In regards to the contract, based on some of the things that have been brought up over the last year or so at council, I think there are some areas for improvement with the contract where we could put in maybe some specific performance metrics on some of the listed items. And also, I think there is maybe some room for adding in some additional areas of controls for distinguishing which that we're using public funds and we're going through this contractor and having something in the contract or maybe through a separate policy or something about how those funds specifically must be separate from other business functions of the chamber. Like we've seen with some confusion about the websites being commingled, things like that. And I think the website specifically that are being operated and run for the tourism promotion activities should be specifically called out in the contract as well. And we should have, I think just some, because I don't see a whole lot of discussion in there about controls at all about commingling funds or anything like that. So I think there's some area for improvement there.
Okay, I see Laura doing her head nod. Okay, is that, and you again said that the contract has to be changed before the December 5th renewal. Is that what you're? I just want to make sure I got that date right.
If the contract were to be terminated, it would have to be terminated by notice of that would have to be given by December 5th. So, but the contract is annually renewed. So if you want to change it, now is the time to change it before it renews for another year.
Okay.
But can I?
And we're hearing you nice and loud that time. Okay, so yeah. I'll make sure you know that. We'll go back to Dan.
Just to follow up on that, the contract does contain a term in there, Laura, about amendments can be made as long as they're mutually agreed upon and signed by both parties. So is that something that we could do at any time?
Yes, as long as they are mutually agreed upon.
Right.
Okay. So next, Brandon, and then we'll go to Al.
So, I mean, when did this contract, is it still valid? Is it still, I mean, it's 10 years old, I see. So I'm not sure, are we just doing like year to year or something?
Laura, can I jump in so you can save your voice for a second? I think I can do this one.
Sure.
If I get it wrong, you can
every year it's renewed.
Annually.
So, yeah.
Or there's your answer. So
okay. Yeah. So it's good through December 31st of this year.
Yes. And then unless you've given notice that it's not going to be renewed,
right,
then it automatically renews for the next year and you need to do an amendment. So, you can go ahead and I think that's what Councilmember Records was talking about. You could go ahead and let this renew and give directions to staff that it needs to be renegotiated by some certain date. You just have a little more leverage at the renewal period time.
And you can also add amendments too throughout, as long as they're mutually agreed to.
Yes.
Okay. So
yeah, and I think in this case, I mean, I think it's all well and good to talk about putting some sort of measurable on the things that we're asking for. I also though wonder if we're asking for the right things. I mean, this was put together in 2010, and I see things like design and develop brochures and publications, and is that the best way to spend our money? I would like to revamp this, and I have zero problems. In fact, I promote the idea of working with the Chamber of Commerce, but it is money that we're spending, and I think it's incumbent upon us to decide what is promotion. Right, there are certain things that are defined in law, I'm sure, on what promotion is. What is promotion? How do we want to do the promotion? What kind of things do we want to include in that? Just like we would with any contract that we send out for folks, and let the chamber say, yes, we can do all of those things. Right. I don't want to just take and maybe spruce up a few things that are already in here. I want to rethink in 2020 in a digital world that we're in, what is promotion, and it has vastly changed in the last 10 years on what we would use as our tools, I think.
Okay,
Mayor?
Laura, I saw your hand up. Yes.
So council member, to explain how the contract works in conjunction with the budget is you have the general language in the contract, and then annually in your budget approval, you are approving the detail of the budget proposal that the chamber presents to you. And that's where those line items come from for things like the 1-800 phone number, postage. It is all done, their payments under the, and Mike can speak to this, under the fund management rules do have to be audited and tracked and itemized exactly the same way that a grant recipient has to itemize and produce receipts for eligible expenses. So I know Mike has been working hard with the chamber over the past year to really improve that record keeping. But yes, the specifics on what they can do, you're approving that and authorizing it with these line items in your budget adoption on what they have to do to perform under the contract. That's why the two of them go hand in hand.
Okay, we'll go to Al next.
Okay, Dan, thanks for all that. I completely agree. We need to have some metrics in this thing. There needs to be some accountability and meeting the contract. And Brendan, you're right. Some of this stuff is probably outdated and unnecessary. I'll just speak up here. When's the last time you dialed an 800 number? I mean, all cell phones pretty much these days call anywhere, right? So I just think that the contract itself just needs to be, evaluated, rewritten a little bit so that it's copacetic for all sides. I think there needs to be the metrics that we're talking about. The reports need to be done on time. The other things that we ask for in this need to occur. And we have to have a way to decide, are they fulfilling the contract or are they not fulfilling the contract? And if anyone's read this, it's so, there's no way to tell if they're fulfilling the contract or not. And I'm not saying they aren't. I'm just saying we have to have a way to say, this is happening or this is not happening. And I think we need to get on that as quickly as we can. And I would love to have this figured out by the December 5th deadline, because to go into it and then we've got to have both parties on each side agree to things. I'm not saying they're not going to agree to us, but they don't have to, right? And Laura, thank you for speaking into your microphone a little better.
Okay, we'll go back to Mike Urban.
I'm sorry to jump ahead of a couple of the council members, and that's by bringing this back on some of this discussion. This is kind of what I'm trying to ferret out too, because you're trying to get ahead of a December 5th deadline to amend the contract and or to modify the contract. But the other side does have to agree to that as well, any changes, which is exactly the same as an amendment to the contract where both sides have to agree. So I know time is of the essence to hit that December 5th date, but I hear a lot of, we need metrics and we need performance measures and all these other things, but I'm not hearing a lot of specifics. So my question to council is there some specifics that Laura can start working on with the contract to get that in front of the chamber for their review before December 5th? And again, it's got to be mutually agreeable. Or is this something we need to tackle as amendments to the existing contract going forward? And she's right, because of the contract and approving the budget, how they go so hand in hand, it is a budget discussion, even though it's a legal discussion. So I'd like some feedback on that, I guess.
So Pat, did I see your hand up? And then we're going to go to Eileen. Okay.
Given the time frame that we've got, and keep in mind that December 5th is what, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out? That's going to be a Herculean task to revise this contract, given all of the points that you're wanting to have included in there. My recommendation would be to go the route of the amendments, but then also attaching a particular time frame in that in the next year, so that we have a reconfigured contract where we have a better idea of exactly what the metrics are that we want to be looking at, how we're going to measure them. And I don't think anybody is going to be able to do that to anybody's satisfaction by December 5th. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think it's happening.
We do a committee moving forward if we take Pat's suggestion and then spend time. I mean, is that a committee, some kind of committee work that we could do?
The future, yes, not in the next week and a half.
Right.
But
I get that.
I mean,
Yeah.
and again, some of you are concerned about Mike's health, and so am I. Number one, the question I ask him every day about this, and I don't want to see that dumped on him or Laura in just a week and a half and then get back to us. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Yes, okay, we can address it, but let's do it in a reasonable time frame, and then we go from there. Okay,
with communication. With communication.
And then we'll go to Al.
I think I've seen the same question on Al's face, but I won't speak for him. Some of the things that don't work very well for me in the budget as presented is like general advertising, $30,000. That's a lot of money for general advertising. Or what does general advertising mean? And so those are the kind of things that I think that Brandon is curious about. And here's kind of a whopper of a question. What happens if we don't have a contract? What happens if we go to again, I'm thinking like a landlord. What happens if we go to like a month-to-month or just do a quarter? We just do a quarterly contract. Is that permissible? And then I don't know how that affects the budget, but let's look at some options here so we can make some people happy here.
Who are you trying to make happy? You?
Okay.
I mean, seriously.
Right.
You look at what you're asking for, and you go on a quarterly contract, you won't have the funds to even establish, let alone sustain a visitor center. We need to be reasonable here.
Yeah, I don't think any kind of short-term contract is really a sustainable idea.
I'm just asking.
My thoughts on that, Eileen, is I don't think that the chamber would ever agree to that, because they're talking about using this budget to fund positions. We're asking them to basically hire people or extend those contracts to people on a month-to-month basis, and I don't think that's reasonable.
They already presented to the council that they've already cut back on their staff, and so they were only dealing with a couple of people there right now because of what COVID did and what the lodging tax money. Again, Al, you were on the line next, I think.
I'm gonna just hold on to my comments.
Of course you are.
But again, trying to be realistic for.
So who just said, "Of course you are"? Whose comment was that? Anybody want to respond? Somebody just said it.
I can say it wasn't me, and I was just reviewing the contract here to see if there was any provisions up for a month-to-month or a quarter-to-quarter, and reviewing the contract. to
What
me,
is
and
promotion?
but I do see that it is tied to the budget approval. So I would have to pivot on that.
Approval is, I mean, the renewal is annual unless canceled. So any other term would be require an amendment and approval. And then the funding for it, though, is what you adopt in the budget. And that's just the consideration that you all have been talking about, is what elements of that budget are there.
Back to Ann Parks.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that given the there are a lot of differences in opinion right now, and we are short on time as far as this contract. I do agree with Councilmember Wright that I think just renewing the contract and then amending it on an amendment basis, changing it on an amendment basis, which I do think is possible. But I think we do need more time, and we need some more clear ideas. We've thrown some things out here, but a little more developed, and take some time to really think about it, and then present it and have the conversation with the chamber. I think that's the most prudent way to proceed right now.
I'm wondering, Laura, if we should do a vote on this to just renew the contract and then have that motion also talk about reviewing the contract, maybe appointing a committee or something like that. So at least Mike can have some direction as to where we're going with this.
Glenn,
Laura, same thing. I mean, just
I would like to make that motion.
Okay.
I would like to move to set a timeline of having a direction to staff to convene and gather feedback from council members and the chamber on the things that we've talked about tonight, and set a deadline of January. What's the meeting Tuesdays in January?
I got you.
Later part of January. January 19th, if there's a meeting that day or around that time, either the prior Tuesday or that Tuesday on the January 19th, to get this contract amended based on the feedback that we gather in that interim time period.
And that would include the approval of the budget tonight as
yes.
presented, but then have a meeting and okay. Is
We're-
that clear? Is that clear with?
Just to be clear, we're not approving a budget tonight.
No,
Right.
I know. We're trying to approve this particular portion of the.
Well,
Okay.
no, you wouldn't be approving this particular portion of the budget, because that's all done when the full budget is adopted. But the motion, as I understood it, is to direct staff to provide feedback to the council on the items discussed tonight by the January 19th or immediately prior meeting, regarding amendments that can be made to the contract.
That's how I understood.
Okay. Eileen.
Yeah, Dan, I thought I heard you say in stating the motion, or kind of, making it up as on the fly there,
right,
that there would be some in utero discussions before it came to the meeting on that date in January.
That's what I was trying to articulate, that we set the January 19th as the date to decide what is going to be the amendment. So there would have to be interim discussions set up at some point in between there.
I would like that clearly in the motion.
I think you were partially cut off.
I would like that clearly stated in the motion, that there will be interim, as Brandon suggested, committee work or workshop. I want that in the motion.
Okay.
Then we better have more time.
That was my concern, is that enough time given the holidays and things like that? And I'm not trying to push it out too far. I just want to be realistic and not have the staff or any, feel under the gun. That was my concern as well.
Speaking of staff,
I'd be willing to push it out into February.
I think Mike has a comment on that.
Mike?
Yeah, I do have a comment on that. If we're not going to meet on the 19th. I'd rather have it pushed back a week than forward a week due to the holidays. And I'd rather keep it in January because I am planning a council goal setting session in February, and I'd like to be able to roll into that with this behind us. So that would be my request for motion, just on a purely selfish basis.
So we're talking what, the 26th of January?
On the 19th, and if there is not a meeting on the 19th, because that is a holiday the day before. So
Yeah.
based on the agenda, if that meeting doesn't happen, I can go to the 26th instead of having to get it done by the 12th.
Right.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yeah.
just a point of order. I never heard a second to the motion,
No,
and I'm not
that's
sure
why I'm
that the
doing-
motion was
No,
firmed up enough. So
Okay.
perhaps if I can make a recommendation that the motion simply be that an amendment be prepared and presented to council not later than January 26th, and then staff have the direction on how to accomplish that, using input from the council members and putting together, asking the mayor to put together a committee.
I think that's acceptable in lines with what I was thinking. I would make that motion.
Okay, you got the motion. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
Second from Pat Wright. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Point of order.
Yes.
Point of-
Okay.
Could we please have a clear statement of the motion?
I thought Laura just gave us that.
Well, there was due to Laura's voice. Sorry, Laura, but
That's
maybe
all right.
please restate the motion.
What I understood it to say was that to direct staff to bring an amended contract back to City Council for action no later than January 26th.
To include,
that would be the motion, and then what we as staff have heard is the direction on how to put the terms of that contract together. I think it would be very complicated for you to put the terms of the contract in a motion, because we're doing this because nobody knows what terms they want right now.
I'm not talking about the terms, I'm talking about the process.
So again, that can simply be direction to staff on how to draft the contract.
And then we can get council a committee or something like that.
Right, the mayor can appoint a committee. I heard that suggestion.
Which was suggested, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Going back again, we've had a motion and a second. Now, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we've got a direction. We've moved that one a little bit. What else on your bullet points do you have, Mike?
Really quick one. Thank you, council. I'll begin working on that as soon as the budget is put to bed. So the last item I had before I turned it back over to the council to take anything specific from any other items that they may want to bring up was the issue of cost of living increases for non-represented staff. So this was brought up by a couple of the different council members to make sure we didn't lose sight of. So I just wanted to give you the basic parameters. We went back and looked at what a 2% COLA would look like for non-represented staff. And the total for that would be $93,517. Of that, the general fund, there are 32 members in the general fund. Of that, it's $50,629. And other funds like the utilities and transit, who have their own revenue source outside of sales tax, that amount for them, those 29 would be $42,888. So we have those numbers. We know who they are. We definitely need to see the economy go to where we really, really need it to go. But we won't lose sight on that too. And if council wanted to discuss that more, at least you have those figures. And that was kind of the end of my email, and getting some more feedback on anything else that I would need to bring back on the first, if the council still feels like that's the day to approve the budget and move on. I just really want to give you all the opportunity to discuss any other items that haven't been discussed tonight.
Okay, any others? In terms of, I just want to make sure, Mike, you've heard enough where you've got the council input on different items that you brought forth, whether to include those to make sure they're in there is when we start talking about the final budget. Yeah.
Right. I'll recap when we're done what I
Okay.
heard tonight and make sure.
Go to Nathan Weller next, and then we'll go to Brandon.
I just wanted to say thank you, Mike. You really stepped up. Really appreciate it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Brandon.
Well, I was just going to say, since Mike talked about recapping, the email we got a couple days ago, Mike, it was incredibly helpful because it outlined everything that we had been talking about. When I mentioned connecting dots a few weeks ago, you connected dots and you actually put like the time of year that this was going to happen, and even some of the maybe the purpose behind why it would be at that time period, and it really was a very I would say auspicious way to dive into the outlook of the next year, and so I appreciate that. And there's if you look all the way downstream, I don't know that our residents would really understand how helpful things like that can be in allowing us to serve them, but it does allow us to tell them here's when this is going to happen, instead of saying every time, well, I got to go double check this or double check that. I mean, you laid it out there for us and made our job a little easier. And the other thing is, and I know no good deed goes unpunished, but by laying it out there, that also allows us to see things that might be missing too, and not have us assume that, oh, it's on there, somewhere. And so yes, I appreciate it. And sorry, I was more long-winded than Councilmember Weller on that, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike, I just want to make sure that you've got what you want.
I think so. And just to recap, and Brandon reminded me of something, I still owe Al a pizza for finding my misprint. So the first thing that I heard is that bringing maybe the mayor putting together a committee, but at the very minimum, me reaching out to council and garnering that feedback on what the chamber contract amendments, the specifics of those should be, whether it's metrics or performance items. I need to gather that and have that collated and for discussions throughout January for a final discussion on the 26th. As far as the positions went, I didn't hear any pushback on anything, especially my desire to go start moving with the GIS position at the end of 20 so that we can have them on board right away on 2021. And then the last thing, and if I capture this wrong, I do apologize, but when it comes to the marketing for the economic development, the 4,000 probably isn't going to be enough, but as we continue to flesh out what that is going to look like and how we're going to do in the different streams that we're going to do, the council is certainly open to a budget amendment to spend the money that needs to be done based on how 2021 progresses. And as another strategic thing I was sitting here thinking about too, it's certainly we're not bidding against ourselves in the budget when we go send this out to a professional marketer. So if I missed, I certainly apologize, but is there any redirect on any of that? Okay, thank you.
Got it.
Council, and thank you so much for the kind words. It's been a process. I've had just a ton of help on this, and the department heads have been great, and my staff has really been super supportive. So with that, that's the end of this agenda item, Mayor.
Okay, Pat, right.
Mike, did you not want to talk about the COLAs for the non-represented staff?
I would be happy to.
Because it's one of the bulleted items on here, and I think that those people need to know that we are at least thinking of them, and they're just as impacted by all of this as our other employees, and that we're looking at possibly some ways to maybe help them if that isn't the case. So
yeah, let me revisit those numbers. So for 21, if there was a 2% COLA to the non-represented staff, that would equal $93,517. The general fund portion of that, there's 32 staffers, and that would be 50,629 of that 93. And the remaining 42,888 of that 93,000 goes into funds that have their own revenue source, like our utility funds. And there's 29 people affected by that. So if council were to want to consider that either now or at a later date, but based on the budget, I mean, we can bring it back mid-year if things turn around too, and have those non-reps made whole like the represented staff. But those are the numbers that I promised I'd bring council.
Well, I just don't want us to lose thought of that through the whole process. And I'm good with talking about, an amendment later, but just I'd like to make sure that we keep all of those people front of mind as well.
Thank you, Pat. Any others? Okay. Brandon.
Mike, I know you have a lot on your plate, and I know you already have something you're going to be researching regarding like impact fees, as I'd mentioned. But I brought up tourism promotion area, and I know it's still something that these other cities, in fact, in Pasco, I think they're doing something now where our former city administrator just went to. Is there any way at a near future meeting you might be able to bring something back, some basic information to present to council on what that would include? The last time I brought it up, I know a couple of my colleagues had mentioned that they needed a little more information about that and what that would entail. And I kind of see it as we're leaving money on the table, and in general, it's not taxing our own people. And I think it would be worthwhile to explore.
I think it'd be good to do a TPA, TPD night. We can do all the acronyms that start with T.
Alphabet soup in one night.
Yeah. So,
and on behalf of Mike's, probably we're talking February or March, maybe, just to get us through budget and get through some other issues that are on the plate right now.
I am absolutely fine with that.
Good. Okay. Want to make sure Mike's taken care of here. Okay. With that, we now move to item number 3. It's a resolution of the city of Pullman regarding to taxation. And again, we've had a lot of requests for expenses, and now we have a way to try and pay for it. And with that, we'll go back to Mike Urban.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a combination resolution ordinance item because they're very interrelated. When I did the revenue presentation on October 6th, we were introduced again to the implicit price deflator, which I will now call IPD for the rest of the night. And as per our chapter, our RCW, we required to conduct the public hearing on the revenues, which I mentioned. And there were no comments that night, but we also discussed how the implicit, the IPD is below the 1% threshold that we're usually allowed to take. And because of that, if the council deems that there is a substantial need, they can levy the full 1%, even though it is above the IPD. And based on some of the council discussions and the way the budget was put together, tonight I've brought to you a resolution declaring that there is a substantial need, if the council agrees, to levy the full 1%. And if that is approved, then the ordinance that follows it would be to take the full 1% property tax levy. Then this first one is for the regular property tax, as well as the excess levy to cover our bond commitments on the 2018 A and B bonds. So the dollars that go along with this, oops, that page. The 2020 levy was $6,736,283.33. A 1% increase to that amount would be $6,803,646.16. We got some good news on the new construction since I originally presented that to you. Big thank to Robin Jones, our county assessor. She went back and looked at the numbers and she found an extra $500,000 of new construction assessed value. So you'll see that number is a little higher than I presented the first time. So I would also ask, and it's part of the ordinance, to take all the new construction as well. And that would be $211,005.07 for the total amount to be collected in 2021 of $14,651.23. The last piece is the excess levy of $1,043,342 and actually 3 cents. The 3 cents did not make it into the agenda item. It is in the ordinance. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I have a resolution and an ordinance for your consideration.
One of the questions before we go to Pat, I saw her hand up. You mentioned what that does for an individual, an average home. I think we've used that before, so a person could see what that does as far as their individual house. A $250,000 home value, that's what we would use before. Where would that fit as far as what that would mean to an individual taxpayer?
As far as the difference between the IPD and the full 1% on the, I had it combined for the city and the EMS, so stand by. We're talking about $3.21 on the regular property tax. The EMS one I will tackle on the next item.
So addition for a $250,000 home is the addition of $3.51.
21 cents.
21 cents. Okay.
All three of them together, because I think this is going to come up later. So I'll just preempt it. If you do the regular tax, the EMS one, which comes up next, and then Metro Parks when we go into that meeting, it's a total of $4.02 on a $250,000 home between the IPD and the full 1%.
Okay. Thank you very much for that number. We'll go to Pat Wright.
Okay, so that was also kind of my question. So overall then, what is the cost per thousand on assessed valuation? So that people that have something other than a $250,000 home can figure that out easily.
Between IPD and the 1%?
No, just the 1%. What the 1%?
Just the 1%.
1%. I did not have the cost per thousand, the change. You're looking at less than 2 cents on a cost per thousand.
Total for all of them?
For the EMS, regular, and Metro Parks.
You said 2 cents per $1,000?
Less than 2 cents per $1,000 difference between the IPD and the full 1%.
Okay, but what I guess my point is, what would, let's say if we went with the full 1%, what is the increase going to be that from what people are paying right now?
Stand by, I will pull the numbers. I just did the dollar difference based on that, so I have it. This will take me a moment. Here we go. Pullman regular. Okay. Sorry, calculator didn't connect.
feel like no one's feeling the pressure like Mike right now.
I know.
I'm going to check my numbers to make sure my shaking hands didn't mistype. Don't worry.
And because we've added the extra 500,000 in terms of new construction, we've had a max of $3.60 per $1,000 of assessed value for years. And some years we've had to bring it back up to $3.60. So where is that? That's for the main tax, but where are we at right now?
I'm going to have to revisit that question because I've been concentrating on this number. But
Give us that number, right? I have no problem.
Yeah, the difference on the 1% increase per thousand is 3.95 cents.
Right.
Okay.
And that's for all three. That's Metro, that's EMS, and that's general.
Okay. Per $1,000 of assessed valuation.
You are correct. Now, Mayor, what did I miss?
No, I'm just saying we've also, because of the new construction, it was probably less than $3.60 per $1,000 of assessed value, because we've had to reset that in the past, a number of years ago. But okay. Other questions? And if not, do I hear a motion on this resolution, item number 3?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and second. Laura, would you read the resolution?
Resolution number R-79-20, a resolution of the City of Pullman, Washington, related to taxation, making a declaration of substantial need for purposes of setting the limit factor for the City of Pullman regular property tax levy for 2021.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. We move next to item number 4.
Actually, Mayor, ordinance number...
The second part, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So ordinance number 20-9 is the one that you need a motion on.
Okay, so 20-9. They were all brought together on the board docs. I just saw one particular thing here, and I didn't see that second part. Thank you very much. That's what we have. A fantastic.
It is the difficulty with board docs.
Okay. We've all had a challenge tonight. Do I hear a motion on the ordinance?
Move to adopt ordinance number 20-9.
Second.
Okay. We've had a second. Laura, would you read that ordinance? That's also a number 3.
Ordinance number 20-9, an ordinance fixing the amount of the tax levy for year 2020 for collection in 2021 to raise revenue to meet estimated expenditures and establishing the special levy to meet general obligation bond debt service obligations.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we now move to item number 4. And I do see the 2 parts on this one. So, Mike, we'll go to you as we talk about EMS.
Sure. And again, thank you. The EMS part of this is very similar to the regular tax you just passed. This one is purely, though, for the EMS function that council approved many years ago. So again, the revenue hearing happened on October 6th on this. We're asking council to take action on this tonight, first on a resolution using the implicit price deflator and declaring a substantial need and raising that to the full 1%, and then the ordinance behind it to levy the full 1% tax. Here we go. So for emergency medical services, the 2020 levy was $935,611.84. A 1% increase would be $944,967.96. There's new construction, and that is included as part of the ordinance, and I would certainly encourage council to take the new construction as well. That amounts to $29,306.79 for a total amount on the EMS levy to be collected in 2021 of $974,274.75. And I failed to mention this on the last one, but I will mention it now. These are time sensitive because we do have to have these up to the county for the commissioners to take action on this before the end of the month. And they like to get it on their board agenda before that. So with that, I request council action on the resolution and ordinance.
Are there any questions on this? If not, do I hear a motion on this resolution?
Move to adopt resolution R80-20.
Second.
Move second. Laura, would you please read that resolution?
Resolution number R-80-20, a resolution of the City of Pullman, Washington, related to taxation, making a declaration of substantial need for purposes of setting the limit factor for the City of Pullman Emergency Medical Services Levy for 2021.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we have an ordinance before us. Any further questions on the ordinance? And if not, do I see a motion on the ordinance?
Move to adopt ordinance number 20-10.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Laura, would you read that ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 20-10, an ordinance fixing the amount of the Emergency Medical Services tax levy for the year 2020 for collection in 2021 to raise revenue to meet estimated expenditures.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Council.
With that, we now are going to adjourn the meeting of the City Council and convene the special Metropolitan Park District meeting, a virtual meeting. First item on the motion is to dispense with the reading of the minutes for the Metropolitan Park District of October 27th. Do I have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we go to the public hearing, which we basically already took a public hearing. We have no one else online at this particular point.
Mayor,
Laura,
just for the record,
we have to
you
open
do.
it up to make sure
You
if there's
do.
anyone on the line. And Rob Baker, I think you're there. Is there anyone on the line that wants to say anything on the Metropolitan Park District? Okay, with that, we have opened the public hearing and we now close the public hearing. And again, we did take some testimony earlier from two individuals dealing with pickleball. And some of that will apply here to the Metropolitan Park District. Now we go to the budget discussion. And again, Mike Urban.
Thank you, Board. So very much like we did in the previous meeting, I wanted to bring forward to you a budget discussion. The full budget has been, for the City of Pullman, has been attached to this item. And I'm really going to have you hone in on page 114, which talks about the revenues and expenditures of the Metropolitan Parks District. So as before, the calendar was set to have these budget hearings and all the work sessions on July 14th by the board. And on October 6th, the board had their revenue hearing with no comment as well. And so we just had the public hearing on the expenses. And so now this item is time set aside for the Parks Board to discuss the budget so I can have some hopefully clear direction to bring back a clean budget document on December 1st. I don't have any more comments really other than when we developed the revenue for this, the new construction was not taken into account because this was done way before the other, and we had no idea what that number was going to be, but County Assessor Robin Jones really sharpened her pencil and found another chunk of new construction dollars for us to the tune of $18,495.51, which is about $120 more than she thought it would be when we first talked back in September. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions and certainly entertain the discussion of the board.
Any discussion on this? Seeing none. We move then to item number 4 on your agenda.
Okay.
And there's a resolution before you, MPD number 2. Do I hear a motion on that resolution?
There's 2 resolutions.
Two resolutions. We'll take the first one. Laura taught me well. Okay, so I see 2 parts there.
I'm watching.
Okay. So this is on MPD 2. Do I hear a motion on this one?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Laura, would you read that resolution, please?
Resolution number MPD-2, a resolution of the Metropolitan Parks District of Pullman, Washington, related to taxation, making a declaration of substantial need for purposes of setting the limit factor for the Pullman Metropolitan Parks District regular property tax levy for 2021.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The second resolution is MPD 3. Do I have a motion on that one?
So moved.
Second.
Moving second. Laura, you'll read that one.
Resolution number MPD-3, a resolution fixing the amount of the property tax levy for the year 2020 for collection in 2021 to raise revenue to meet estimated expenditures of the Pullman Metropolitan Parks District.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
With
you,
that,
Lord.
we will now adjourn the meeting of the Metropolitan Park District. We will reconvene the meeting of the City Council. We have item number 5 before you, introduction of the legislative priorities for 2021. I know Mike had a chance to send those off, some of the ones that we had from last year. I can tell you, and I know a lot of you have had other committees that you're on, other boards. I've been on a couple of state board meetings this week alone, and right now the state legislature is talking about a $4.2 billion shortfall because of COVID and because of the lack of revenue, other sources. Everything that I've been hearing from state is that you're hoping you'll get cut too badly. So we need to be realistic in terms of what the priorities are and what can be accomplished during this particular time during a pandemic. So Mike, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Council, I did send you an email on October 30th when this became a real relevant topic, and I should have been on this sooner, but I apologize. The interim thing was still very new to me. But when I spelled out kind of a work plan, I got a lot of good support, so I thank you all very much. So I just want to reiterate that for the benefit of the group and for the listening audience. So November 17th today is just an introductory discussion on this item. The goal on December 1st is to be able to come back and have a full discussion on the legislative priorities document to capture all the language and the priorities of the council going into the meeting on December 15th, where I hope that it's a clean document. I can put it on the consent agenda because at that meeting we have scheduled, assuming that the vote holds out the way it does, but already confirmed Senator Schessler, Representative Dye, and Representative Schmick will be joining us on December 15th to discuss our legislative priorities ahead of the session that begins on January 11th. So attached in your packet certainly was the 2020 legislative priorities, and I certainly wouldn't encourage council to roll these over exactly the way they are, because there is discussion about transportation funding and no on I-976. That is definitely behind us. As well included was the AWC city legislative priorities. And then Chief Heston included the Washington Fire Chiefs 2021 legislative priorities for consideration. We have a memo here from the police department from Chief Gary Jenkins that just lays out some priorities as well. And then the last memo is from the Washington Recreation Parks Association that was provided by Recreation Manager Kurt Damon as far as his professional organization goes. My professional organization certainly didn't weigh in on this, but I did add some things to the end of the agenda items on those 4 bullet points for council to discuss and consider. So this is really a first blush at this, and the mayor did lead off that they're talking about a $4.2 billion deficit. But I certainly want to be able to see if there's any more research that the council would like or any more information going into the next meeting so I can come fully prepared for a discussion.
And if there are any particular hot items that you would want to make sure that if they're not on this list that we have included. We'll go to Nathan Weller first, and then we'll go to Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you as well, Mike, for sending those legislative. I don't know that there's anything to add, as you've already mentioned, several $billion, and that's just what we know now. You know, I was on a call with Schmick and a few healthcare organizations, Faith Action Network and Public Healthcare for Washington. Actually, it was back in October because I contacted yourself, Mike, regarding it. You know, right now I feel it's really, really important to emphasize that even though things are going to get cut, healthcare as well as mental health, and this is one we already have there, but I feel healthcare as well should be as protected as we possibly can. Mental health, so much so, because I feel, and my talks with Schmick, is that, you know, we're going to face additional issues, not only with adults, which we've already seen from the hospitals and recovery center, but also with children coming up. And they're already experiencing it. And something that Representative Schmick brought up is that there's some real barriers for educating new counselors, specialists in this field. And I think it's important for us to support and, you know, mention this to Representative Schmick to support his efforts to streamline that process to get experts in that field on the ground as soon as possible. And so this may include utilizing, right now there's special certifications for Washington, but also utilizing some way to certify those counselors that practice in Oregon or bordering states so that they can also practice here in Washington. That's something that Representative Schmick mentioned, and I feel we need to support him on that. That's all from me. I've spoken enough. Mental health, healthcare, my major ones.
Okay, Pat Wright.
Again, this would be in light of the new restrictions that have been imposed. And in some of the reading material that I had on that, there was indication that there were some state dollars that were possibly available to help mitigate some of the problems that are going to arise as a result of that. And I'm particularly seeing that with, you know, those businesses that have been most affected. And I don't know whether this is the appropriate venue for that or not, but if there's a way to make sure that the legislators are taking that into consideration in terms of utilizing some of those funds. I don't know if those are the rainy day funds or what, but there were some large amount of money that I saw and read that's out there if they can get it set up to help people. Did anybody else see that, or was that just me?
No, it was, but they were really counting on federal dollars. They were counting on the federal money to go through the state and then the state reallocate.
Oh, okay.
because I haven't seen it come directly from the state. And the rainy day fund, I think you can hear from Senator Schessler and others. They're already zapping that just to try and handle the 4.2 deficit they have. But any kind of help that was coming is they were basically counting on federal money to come through. That's what I've heard. Mike, did you hear anything different than that?
100%. The talk of the rainy day fund is still at the state ledge level. It hasn't trickled to anywhere else, and that's something that I included as one of my dots too.
Okay. Al Sorensen.
In talking with Dawn at Sweda yesterday, they are, Pat, staying on top of any possible dollars, and she'll be going after anything possible for Sweda money, not knowing exactly what's available. There was talk of a $50 million fund somewhere. So if there is stuff for small business and it comes back through the Commerce Department and Sweda, she's on top of it. Just a little update for you.
Dan Rickards.
I think one of the things that I'd like to include is something about affordable housing. I know the state has changed some code sections over the past couple of years to ease up on some restrictions to allow more flexibility in terms of buildings and size and restrictions and things like that. And I'd like to see the state continue in exploring further options to make more flexible options available to people in terms of housing affordability. But also along those same lines, I know it's in some of the proposed documents that are included there, Mike, but on the topic of rental assistance and eviction assistance, not just the moratoriums, but when those moratoriums run out, we know that people still owe money, and that when that comes to bear, that's going to further impact our slide into a downturn in the economy. So I think that's something that we should advocate for more state attention to that issue as well.
Okay. Eileen.
Yeah, I'm absolutely there with Dan on that. We need to look at those state regulatory things that may hamper affordable housing and accessible housing. Accessible housing is huge, and it's going to be huger as going forward. Multi-generational housing is going to be a big deal, and as families expand and contract, and as our economy is more challenged. So I would love to see something very specific, asking the state legislature to look at those regulatory things.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, it's affordable and accessible housing. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Accessible in terms of ADA compliance and that sort of thing, and that sort of accessible, not accessible necessarily economically, although that's part of it too. But
yeah. Okay. Got it.
Any other comments or suggestions? Okay.
Okay. I'll do some additional legwork and reach out to several of you that I made these notes on and help craft some language for discussion on the 1st. Thank you.
Real quick, sorry.
Nathan? Yeah.
If I may. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eileen, you brought up a great point discussing multi-generational. An emphasis on training for elder care workers is going to be very, very important moving forward. We have a larger, older population with less that are younger, and there needs to be a focus on it, especially here in Washington. And I know with Pullman being, a retirement area as well.
Okay. With that, we now go to new business, and I know, Nathan, you have a matter you want to bring forth and update the council with.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Johnson. And if Jennifer's on here still, I'm not sure. I'm going to see if, okay, here. Thank you, Jennifer. Eileen, I know you had brought up last time we talked about the EDA Sprint grant, wanting all of us to be kept in the loop and up to date. And so immediately after, I was sending out an email to Brian Kraft, and Jennifer has been stellar on this. So I'd like Jennifer, because she's very knowledgeable on this, to be able to share some of the information. I know we have a meeting tomorrow, our group, about this. So wanted to let you know, Eileen, and the rest of the council. Jennifer?
Thank you, Councilman Weller, and good evening again, Mayor Johnson and the City Council. I'm going to be referring to some of my notes. What I have is an outline of this EDA Sprint grant. This was brought to us by Brian Kraft, who is the Assistant Vice President for Innovation and Research Engagement at the Office of Research for WSU. And this is the 2020 Scaling Pandemic Resilience Through Innovation and Technology, otherwise known as Sprint Challenge. And I think it's important to note that this whole opportunity came by rather quickly, and it's a quick turn, and that's well known by the EDA. But the whole focus is on recovery and resilience in the context of the pandemic. So with that, I'll kind of go through the outline that the team has produced to date. It's not complete. We have additional meetings this week, but I'll be happy to take back comments and questions to that team. And that team does include the SBDC, as well as the Office of Research at WSU, the Port of Whitman, and the City of Pullman. So those are the 4 entities that would be combining together under the city's umbrella to apply for this grant. So the elements that the team has worked out is to develop an approach, a Pullman-centric effort to focus on building routes to access WSU programs, resources, and talent across the state, and to maximize the potential for innovation and entrepreneurship. So the outline, it has, it's just a quick abstract here. The elements that the team is focused on would mostly focus on entrepreneurial support. So looking at any of the gaps that we have discovered through the pandemic, and also responding to the pandemic with the ability to increase our entrepreneurial paths to really diversify the economy. But also, I will say there are spillover effects to the local businesses, and that's one of the things that the team is excited about, is the ability to bring to scale ability, the ability for small businesses to meet this moment and to scale up their own technology. So that's one of the reasons that the SBDC is involved. So the elements right now, just very briefly, would include training, education, and support by involving a statewide resource that leans on WSU expertise and networks. And those have to do with mentoring network development, entrepreneurial faculty ambassador program, and topical informational sessions. Those would really be the small business support trainings that the SBDC would be providing. And I think they are working on a number of different elements right now that would be incorporated into this grant application. The second element would be building out a local investment network. So this is a model that's been validated in rural areas to establish an angel investment network within a rural community. And that would be done in collaboration with the Association of Washington Cities, with a specific focus on replicating the work that's been successful elsewhere here on the Palouse. And then the third part would be somewhat of a place-based focus. And here I'll say that Nathan and I are working with the Port of Whitman on this. And and I do have to check and make sure that this element can remain in our application, because construction specifically is not permitted, but I'm hoping that some of the costs with looking at a place-based focus would be permitted. And here we are looking at bringing some of those activities close to downtown, but potentially very close to WSU at the steam plant. That's one opportunity. And that really is getting after building a stronger connection between WSU and downtown to build on the opportunity of bringing potentially additional startups closer to downtown, but also to engage people, if there are, after COVID, if there are classes, if there are sessions, if there's mentoring, to actually bring that either to the gateway area or to the downtown. So some of the ideas there would be to establish a feasibility study to see if any of the identified buildings would work for that, and then potentially additional sources of revenue that would assist with developing those ideas at those specific locations. So again, the teams are working on each of those elements and building them out more, and we'll be meeting very soon about that. In terms of the actual grant application itself, there are some required forms and supporting documentation that would be typical for a federal grant. There is an 80-20 split, but the 20% can be completely in kind. And we do not have actual dollars associated with any of the elements just yet. But the application can be for up to $500,000 over a 12-month period, or $750,000 over an 18-month period. So those are all items that the team is still discussing and formulating. And as I said, a lot of different members are continuing to think through the proposal and what exactly they want each of these elements to look like. What I provided was just kind of a brief outline. And I would say even beyond that, there's been, since that outline was developed, there's been a little more thinking about ensuring that this proposal aims to augment and enhance the availability of small business support structures while introducing new activities that collectively serve to diversify our rural economy and open up new opportunities for entrepreneurs in the region. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview, and I know Nathan and I will be happy to take your comments and questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. And I know, Eileen, one of the things we've talked about is, the place-based. That was something that I know you've thought quite a bit about. But Jennifer, thank you so much for being here and stepping into there. It's important for all of us to be on the same page, as has been mentioned. So please, questions we'll field, and if we don't know, we can take it back to Brian, but just wanted to bring it back to the council.
Are there any comments on that? Brandon, we'll go to you.
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you for the explanation. And I don't have it in front of me, but I seem to recall a conversation that I had with Brian Scott when he was doing the downtown master plan, and he talked about mixing uses in a downtown environment. He was not talking about residential with that, though he also talked about mixed use like developments. But in terms of business itself, he talked about, the traditional clustering of businesses, and then he talked about mixing uses of business somewhere in our conversation.
Yeah,
and
I can read to you. Desired uses should build on existing strengths such as offices, residences, cafes, and restaurants, as well as retail establishments that draw people into downtown and enliven pedestrian activity. Additionally, active uses, I think this is, let's see, Like office space, residential uses are also great for providing a built-in clientele for downtown. And so he talks about more passable office space is better located on the upper floors and side streets. So is that what you're referring to, Brandon?
Well, no. He talked about a variety of different kind of businesses. I guess the background behind our conversation was I was asking him about the professional services type of businesses that were downtown, and does that take away somehow from downtown if those exist in lieu of like a commercial entity? And he said no, and he expanded. So what I guess what I was going to ask is, if I'm going to have to do my research as well, but maybe you could look into it. I don't recall whether he actually articulated anything about that and made it official in the downtown master plan. But I think that certainly I'm on board with this, and I know Brian Kraft is he thinks on a different level than I do, and I'd love to be able to have that at our disposal to show some additional justification that it aligns with whatever it is that we had already had planned out, if that makes sense.
Any other comments? Eileen.
Yeah, I think this is an amazing idea, and I'm definitely supportive of it. I still want to see those documents, but one of the stumbling blocks to some of the other proposals that have floated by, I'm just giving you some history here, is, and Brandon touched on it, is the mixed use in terms of residential and let's just call it makerspace. Safety is, of course, a primary consideration when you get people living in work environments and craft environments and manufacturing environments. The cost can be prohibitive in terms of making sure that residences are safe from, and we've had this happen here in Pullman. We had a major fire where people were living in a place where somebody was doing artisan welding in the basement, and we nearly lost a couple of firefighters over that. So, and Mike can flesh us out on that. Just that's a consideration, just to kind of keep in the back of your mind, that to drop that word residential in is going to cause some sensitivity within the community and maybe a lack of support. But that's just a kind of a footnote. But yeah, I love this.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. One other item is a follow-up to the last meeting when I brought before you that Commissioner Art Swanik asked about whether some of the HB 1406 money that had been gathered here in Whitman County, some in Pullman, could possibly used for some of the relief victims in Malden and also Pine City. The question was, how much money are we talking about? At last Community Action Center board meeting, which was Wednesday of this past week, Jeff Guyette said it's about $59,000. And I asked him, I said, do you have any kind of program that you were trying to use in Pullman for that? He said, what originally we were planning was to let the money grow, because you can't do much with $59,000. And he said that you probably can't do much to help people in Malden and Pine City with $59,000. He had no exact project right now that would be using that money. The original proposal was to keep the money and let it grow, add to it, so we can do a major project in Pullman eventually. As you know, right now they're doing the River City project. A Community Action Center is for low income and transitional housing. That's back behind the movie theater up there in the right close to the Palouse Business Park. So that's a major project they're doing right now. So that's the information. The question from Art Swanik was, can some of that money be used towards the Malden and Pine City, because it did come from Pullman. So that's the question that I have. I would not make that decision on my own. I want to make sure that the council has some input on that. So don't know where you're at, but that would help me get back to Art Swanik as far as what the money could be used for. Go to Ann Parks.
Thank you, Mayor. The United Way is working diligently and has brought in a few $100,000 so far, I believe. And so not to say that the money isn't needed, but my feeling is there's a lot of aid out there right now, which is necessary. And there are discussions and conversations about how to make sure to track that properly and allocate it properly and those sort of things. So I guess my feeling would be to maybe just let this money leave it where it is right now, and perhaps revisit this a little bit later, because there will be needs later as well. And that would be my opinion, or my thought is just to let it ride right now, not say, unless Commissioner Swanek has a specific item that he's thinking about. But as far as just offering it as general aid, and we could also talk to some folks on the task force, I mean, if we wanted to do that. But like you said, it is not a substantial amount right now, and there are a lot of dollars that they're dealing with currently and trying to manage that.
And again, the money would not be in, it's been gathered in Pullman, and that was what Jeff Guyette said originally, that money was just going to be held so we could eventually do a big project in Pullman to help the community here too. So if you agree with Dan, let's go to Dan Records. I see Dan's hand up.
I just had a question, Glenn. I remember when we originally talked about these funds, I recall that there was a part from the county and then a part from Pullman, and that there was some sort of agreement or memorandum of understanding or something that we did with the county about what the use for this funds would be. So the $59,000, is that what we're talking about, is just from the Pullman part, or is that the combined pot? That's the combined pot
That's been gathered in Whitman County. The Whitman County is the collector. So
with that, I mean, I think that changes my perspective a little bit from what Ann's comments were about. This is not just money that's coming just from the city of Pullman. It's coming from the whole county, but the bulk of it's going to be coming from Pullman.
The majority of the money comes from Pullman because we're collecting.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I just wanted to make that clarification for everybody to ponder as well. Because the Malden and Pine City fires, those devastated those communities. And I feel like that, there should be some collective coming together to support those communities as well. And if these funds can be used for that in some way, I don't know about using all of it, and we do have to keep in mind and balance that with our plans and our intended goals to support a larger project in the future too.
And again, for what we've been doing around here with Community Action Centers for low income and trying to help that situation, because obviously housing costs are quite high, and so are rents, and this is one thing that's been able to help with that. I saw Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a tough one because, from what Ann said, with the United Way has been doing an amazing job. I've been doing some research into the amount of money they've raised and everything. But at the same time, with it being joint money between the county and the city, I really come from a philosophy that we're all in this together in the county, and helping out the cities out there that may not be able to do it themselves is really important. Thinking more regionally than siloing our efforts. And I know that may not be popular, especially with a lot of Pullman citizens out there, but that's how I feel. So.
Well, I've had sort of split opinion so far. So any other comments on this? I can basically get back to Swanek and say that we have a mixed opinion on it. But Bren?
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons, I think a lot of us are of mixed opinion as well. I absolutely agree with the philosophy of helping. I guess I don't even know what the situation is. Like I don't have a good, clear understanding if there were to be a situational analysis. I don't know how many people are planning to come back to Malden. I don't know how many have families elsewhere. I don't want to, I guess, necessarily just say, let's just shift all this money to somewhere without really having a good understanding, or at least a basic understanding. My whole understanding is that this tragedy happened. I know that groups such as United Way have really stepped up. I know local churches stepped up, did clothing drives. They were turning clothes away. They had so many. So I'm not really sure what this pocket of money would go to. So any of that information, I think, would.
I'm trying to give you as much as I have.
No, I know, and I appreciate that.
Community Action Center is up there at least 3 days a week, meeting the needs of the public up there, along with the other funding that's there. So obviously, we're not going to make a decision on that, but I need to get back to Art on this. So Dan, I'll go back to you.
I was thinking, Glenn, wasn't there some communication from Art about the current situation and some of the immediate concerns being the families that are living in mobile homes or trailers, RVs, that going into the winter, there's inadequate insulation and concerns about adequate heating and adequate utilities. Am I correct in
that is also a problem, but as you well know, the $59,000 would not go to taking care of that. I know that we're looking right now with the county from the Community Action Center, different hat on, to look at some lots that are in Rosalia that may have water and sewer, where we might be able to have people with families there to be housed during the winter, which at least give them some kind of protection kind of thing. But that again is working in Community Action Center, and they're also working some state grants on that. So at this point, I'll just get back to Art and let him know where we're at, and no clear decision. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to be at this all night till late. So anyway, with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. If you have some other thoughts, you can email me. All right. On that particular mall in Pine City. Good night. Again, we're off next week.